Welcome to the Blackboard. Your
All right, there we go. Let's see, Hildy and others, can you hear me now? Thank you for alerting me in the chat. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Let me just go back up one. I failed to connect the session. Thank you so much for alerting me. All right, so just a reminder, the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series designed to help K-12 educators reimagine education with Blackboard's teaching and learning solutions. The series harnesses the power of our K-12 community of academic leaders, teachers, and other experts to provide relevant, real-time, on-demand, and ongoing professional development opportunities for K-12 educators. Again, for those of you who are new, I'm Katie Gallagher, the Director of Teaching and Learning Solutions Marketing for Blackboard K-12. Today I actually have Melissa Mares, our K-12 Product Marketing Intern with us. We'll be moderating questions in the chat and moderating the series this spring. Again, we encourage you to reach out to us if you'd like to present for our future session or have a topic that you'd like to see in the future. You can always reach me at katie.gallagher@blackboard.com. Every webinar in the series is recorded. You can search for the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series playlist on the Blackboard TV YouTube channel, or go to tinyurl.com/bitsk12 to get to all the sessions in the series. After the session, in a few days, you'll be receiving the recording and the presentation slides in the form of a PDF. You'll also get an invitation to participate in an ongoing online professional learning community designed to augment the series and provide an avenue for ongoing collaboration and dialogue. So please accept that invitation and participate. As you can see, we are about to wrap up our spring series. Kind of an exciting time as we move into the summer and start planning for the fall. We've got one more session lined up for the spring, not next week, but the following after Labor Day, or after Memorial Day, I mean. So please join us on Monday, June 1st for iReach, incorporating Blackboard as a cornerstone for digital conversion with Maryville City Public Schools from Tennessee. You can register for this session at bb.blackboard.com/K12bits. Typically you can register for any session in the series, but this is our last one this spring and we'll be ramping up for the fall over the summer. So don't miss our last session. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the free BBK12 Live app so you can access all the sessions in the series and the best from Blackboard World. Which reminds us that Blackboard World is indeed coming up again. It's going to be in DC this year, so it's a little easier for K-12 educators to get to than Vegas. So please join us July 21st to the 23rd. We're really excited to announce our keynote speakers are Aaron Sams and John Bergman, the pioneers of the flipped classroom model. We'd love for you to join us in Vegas or join us in DC to participate in BB World 2015. We are super excited today to welcome Diana Bailey back to the K-12 Bits series. Diana will take us through what do you mean stress-free teaching. Imagine feeling like you've created an individual education plan for every student without all the work. Personalized learning, engagement, and less stress are just a few of the benefits that she's experienced through implementing blended learning in her fifth-grade classroom. Join her as she shares a journey that leaves students asking to skip recess and her leaving one-sentence sub-notes that say the kids know what to do. And I can attest personally, I've been in her classroom, I've watched the action happen face-to-face, and it's pretty amazing. It's transformative. And not only do the kids, come to class when they're sick, they even run into school every single day. So Diana was raised in Lawrence, Kansas. She's taught elementary students for 11 years. 2 years ago, she started to utilize the blended learning model for 21st century learners. During the past 2 years, she's won the Unusually Excellent Educator Award and the Lawrence School District Teacher of the Year Award for 2014. She was a regional semifinalist for the State of Kansas Teacher of the Year, and her peers seek her out as a role model for collaboration and blended learning practices to implement in their own classrooms. Her love of the outdoors, exercise, travel, and humor keep her in touch with the youth of today, constantly seeking new ways to improve her teaching strategies. Diana Bailey, our expert for the day and inspiring teachers. Diana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Katie. I appreciate it. Good afternoon. My name, as Katie mentioned, is Diana Bailey, and I'm a 5th grade teacher in Lawrence, Kansas. And I've been an elementary educator for the last 12 years, as you recently heard. Currently, I teach at Deerfield Elementary School that has about 530 students enrolled. My 5th grade class over the last few years bounces between 25 and 30 students. To give you a little bit of an idea of where I'm teaching, our district is made up of 11,000 students, 1,800 staff, 980 certified, and 20 buildings altogether. We have 30% free and reduced lunch and over 25 languages spoken. Over the last 12 years, I've continually sought out ways to differentiate, and more recently, how to do this using multimedia. I knew I was not reaching all my students with the traditional way of teaching, and trying to get enrichment and remediation daily into the classroom was exhausting. 3 years ago, my principal began to ask me if I knew anything about flipping a classroom or if I had heard of blended learning. And I'm actually very excited to hear that John Bergman will be at BB World, because I did read his book and that kind of started me on this journey. I got very intrigued by all the different ideas that was coming out of blended learning and on my personal learning network. Fortunately, at the same time, my district was looking to pilot 8 classrooms with blended learning, and our goals were to increase engagement, personalize learning, and incorporate more technology. I was chosen as one of the 8 in the fall of 2012. This first year was not easy. It was difficult, and if you can imagine a room of 8 people, a kindergarten teacher, 4th grade, 5th grade, and some high school teachers, all of us coming together, not really knowing what blended learning was, but having to develop it in our own classrooms. Through these collaboration sessions and sharing of our failures and successes in the classroom, we began to put together a great vision of what blended learning should look like for our district. And I feel like our model would be most closely resembling the FLEX model that the Christian Institute has. We incorporate both online and face-to-face instruction. And as we did this over the last 3 years, I witnessed learning come alive in my classroom, and the stress completely decreased and have more and more free time. This next slide accompanies a video, and that'll be in the chat link, I think. And as you watch this video, I'll give you about a minute and a half to watch that video. There's not a lot of sound, but I want you to be thinking about, is there a front of this classroom? How are the students learning? Do they have any technology or some technology? And how is the space being used? Hopefully the video worked for you and you're able to kind of see it, or you can watch it later. It's a brief walkthrough of my classroom and the different working areas of these students. So nowadays, I hear students discussing math in depth without being prompted. They have math talk on their own. They might get different answers to the same problem as they're working collaboratively and decide to rework the problem together, again, just to make sure that they have it right. Students have discourse, actual discourse about historical events and effectively begin debating topics. Kids challenge each other in science and say, what if we changed a variable? Let's do it. Run over and ask Mrs. Bailey if we can stay in for recess. So then other people say, can I come in early? I want to get started on math at 7:30 instead of 8:05. Can we stay late? I need to finish up something. And then a really weird one that always throws me is, can you assign me more homework? I have kids ask me if they can FaceTime with students that are sick and unable to come to the class at the time or out of town. My students also tell me privately that they are excited that they're not in trouble for moving ahead, or they don't feel bad when they need extra work, and that they love the personal time that they get with me. And as Katie mentioned earlier, my sub-plans, like today's sub-plans, said the kids just know what to do, and then a brief timeline of what will be happening during the day as the teacher, as the sub kind of sits there. So how do you get to this point? Because it doesn't happen overnight. There are some main components that were key to implementing blended learning and thus taking the stress out of my teaching. So where do I begin? Well, one of it was with a mindset. There needs to be this paradigm shift from the traditional ideas and model to a newer version, and one I like to call a 22nd century version, if you will. Gone are the rows of desks and me at the front of the classroom spoon-feeding information at a set pace to the students. Instead, they get to kind of choose their pace, place, and path, and how they get the information, whether it's from me or a video or somewhere else. But this new mindset can also include asking yourself some tough questions, and these questions I've had to ask myself over all these years, and I still sometimes get new questions that I have to think about for a second. What does homework look like now for these students? Can it be a video? Can you have no homework at all? How do we take the practicing that we've traditionally pushed to home with the parents, bring that back to the classroom and have the practice with the actual teacher? And what is our purpose of homework? Where should the students be practicing? Is a due date flexible? Can it be different for other students? Do some students just need more time? Should due dates change if needed? Here were some interesting ones. Can students retake a test? Can they take it together because they've been working through the lessons together and they have an actual discussion as they work through the problem? Can a student ask, well, I really didn't get to study, can I take it another day? Do all the kids have to have the same end product and show mastery, or is it okay for a child to choose the way they demonstrate their proficiency? And how do you keep track of all this nonsense? Hopefully I will get to a lot of these things as we keep going through this slideshow. Then there's the no fear. I really had to kind of have that because as I began to implement these new ideas, I was worried about failing, and I was worried, what if the flipped homework doesn't work? What if the parents don't like it? What if the kids aren't learning from that? What if the video isn't good enough? What if I'm not in the front of the classroom? Will I be losing control, if you will? But what I realized as I persevered through all these questions and made decisions based on the groups that I had each year, I was modeling the perseverance and problem solving that we really want our kids to have. So in this picture here, I made these hot pink arrows because I want you to look at this space that's very different from the video you possibly saw. That is my space. That was my entire space. And that wasn't all. I had a second desk. And what learning is happening at these two spaces? So this is kind of another paradigm shift we had to have in our district and even for myself. What does a space in the room look like for blended learning? And the look on the student's face here down in the front, why I chose this, is kind of the look of my assistant superintendent when she came in to look and assess and talk to me about the new furniture we might be getting. And she really said, well, why is this all needed? You're 1/25th of the classroom and you take up a quarter. It was this fiefdom I had. It was like kind of some way to like, I don't know, it was pretty intense. It was hard at first, though, to get rid of it and think, why do I not need that? But of course, a lot of stuff is on my computer now, and I've found different spaces for some of this and thrown away a lot of stuff. And this is when I really began to reflect. I think I started teaching partly for the show and for it being about me and having, you know, I made the best lesson, I can make the kids laugh and learn math and all this other stuff, but it was still me doing all the work in front of the classroom all the time. And so as I had this paradigm shift and I was able to kind of clone myself and get more free time, I realized that it isn't about me. It's about these 25 to 30 kids. And so the space should reflect that. Today, when I walk into a room with a teacher space like my fiefdom here, I just cringe, and I can't imagine what it's like for those students. I know I won't have one again. And so our new space at our district came with some new furniture and some new fun technology. Our district decided to replace the desks with these round tables you see in the right-hand picture and 2 kidney-shaped tables that you see in the left-hand picture. They also provided technology, 2 32-inch TVs with mini-Macs, as you see in the left, 5 MacBook Airs, 5 iPads, and a projector with an Apple TV. These physical changes allowed students for more one-on-one collaborative space. And yes, I have 30 students sometimes, or 25, and only 5 MacBook Airs. So how do you make that work? I kind of make them stations, and we share, and often they're doing collaborative work. So our district decided not to go one-to-one. I was, of course, very fortunate to have my district providing these, but I was also blending with the old furniture and those big 2 ugly desks. They're definitely nice to have, but not essential to relieve some of the stress from teaching and free up time, and you can still be blending without all this stuff. What I would consider to be probably the most important components to help you and relieve the stress would be a learning management system like Blackboard and setting up your classroom community or environment to instill problem solving, perseverance, and exploration. So enough about all my stuff. How can you maybe decrease your time and stress? Let's hear about some of those. So 2 weeks before that first day, I begin by sending a note home to the parents. And I wish it weren't true, but of course as teachers we work all the time and we work through the summer. And of course you're saying, wait, this isn't decreasing stress or my free time, but bear with me here because this pays back tenfold over the year. This note I send home is not revolutionary, I know that, but what accompanies it I believe is. Not only do I introduce myself, but I send videos of what blended learning looks like and links to Blackboard with login information and in the how-to video to teach the parents and the students how to log in successfully into Blackboard so that they can begin to get in there and play with the stuff even before they step foot into my 5th grade classroom. However, what I feel is even more important than that, because we can do that practice in the classroom, are these meetings I set up at the beginning of the year before the first day of school. I meet with parents for 15 to 20 minutes, and before that they come in to meet with me, we have a worksheet that asks them about their child's hobbies, likes, dislikes, fears, favorite sports, books, anything that I can get information about them, something they're excited about for 5th grade, something they're scared about. And then when we meet, we just go over the worksheet and we get to know their student and their child in this very positive manner. So instead of waiting until my school district's on trimesters, so instead of waiting until November or 6 weeks in when you're having trouble, our first contact with those parents is very positive. And you really start to get to know your learner, and that's where I'm going to begin to make this individual education plan for that person because I'm going to know them so well by the time they step foot into my classroom. This has been so successful for me and frees up a lot of my time after the fact because it cuts down on all these emails and questions from parents and silly things because they get to have you for those first few minutes. That my principal has been able to find funds so that we can get paid for these actual time that we meet with parents, which is kind of nice. So some of the links in Blackboard that I've created to inform and help the kids practice is, of course, you can see here a screenshot of my Blackboard account, the power of blended learning. Parents and students can go in there and watch various videos and see my classroom live and learn about what our district's vision is about blended. Then I have this thing about how your brain works. And you can watch videos and kind of see how your brain works and realize that we don't all learn the same. And from there, we kind of begin to set this mindset of perseverance and open-mindedness of everybody's going to learn a little bit differently. I also send home a video of me going through a PowerPoint of the curriculum. And this is kind of like John Bergman's Flipping It, because we used to have a parent night. And this parent night now is just so easy and stress-free because we kind of flip it and send these videos and all this information out earlier. So that parent night looks so different. The kids and the parents come in together and they walk around the room and they play with the stuff and they log into Blackboard and they get to see what a day in the life of their child will be. And again, this has helped so much cut down on, well, we didn't know how to do this, or my child doesn't know how to log in, or any of these type of things. And so there's no stress on the parent side, and then we don't have the stress of having to stand up in front of the parents like we used to do and kind of traditionally teach them parent night. We're kind of flipping that as well. I also set up discussions those first few weeks in Blackboard to familiarize the kids with those tools, and they can begin to talk about what they did over their summer in this low-risk, no-grading sort of situation. And they enjoy starting to get to know who's in their classroom and things like that. This, for me, really takes away those first few weeks of being bombarded by emails from parents asking you very silly sometimes or simple questions that you know that could be answered with a video or with just meeting one-on-one with them and them knowing, hey, I've got your child under control and this is going to be a wonderful year. I actually get very few, if any, emails from parents because they feel so well informed. And there are some times that I kind of feel weird because I'm like, nobody talks to me, I guess. I'm not needed. And I'll talk to you more about that as we get into the classroom as well. So then what happens when we get into school here? So the first 2 weeks, you're just going to be setting norms. And of course you can tell I have no desk now in this picture here. It's just that shelf in the back with the surfboards. The beginning of the year is going to be more traditional, and I have an interesting story to share with you because that first year when we were piloting, we of course didn't start off on day one blended learning. We kind of worked our way into it and added components as the year went on. And so that's what you should do. But by the end of that year, I had also won some of those awards. And I felt like I had won the Super Bowl. I was going to go into August of my second year and things were just going to happen and do it all on its own. And it was an epic fail on my part. Because I just figured these kids would come in and we're so good, you just blend, you walk in, and you can't do that. So after Labor Day of that year, I had to really go back and turn back to a little bit more traditional and reteach the kids how they need to collaborate. And then I reward them with, we use gold slips for positive behavior supports. And so all this modeling that's going on in the classroom, where I hear two kids starting with math talk, I start rewarding them with massive gold slips. And then other kids notice and they're like, well, that's how I would talk about it. And so we kind of set up those kind of norms. The mutual respect, I'll probably touch base several times about how this is a very shared space. There are no assigned seats because kids need to have the flexibility to move within groups depending on the subject and their personal needs for their learning. Some other successes I've had in those first few weeks is to just have those days where you have kids, okay, one station is going to be logging into the Mini-Mac and seeing what that does. Because sometimes it prompts you because it'll be your first time logging into that and there's a whole set of questions you have to go through. So just take some time and have the kids play with the stuff so that when it's time to use it for learning, they're ready. All this while, we're modeling the growth mindset and this paradigm shift of kind of this more blended model, and everybody learns a little bit differently, and we all can kind of move at our own pace that is needed. I sometimes even do some scavenger hunts to kind of help them, guide them through playing, if you will, the stuff. At this time, I'm also getting to know the kids, and this is off one of those other screenshot modules in Blackboard, where they find out what their mindset is, and then they take some quizzes on the ways they learn best, and then they journal about it, and I can read along with them. So if I've got a kiddo that's a complete kinesthetic learner, I'm going to know that he's probably not going to want to be in Blackboard all the time. He might want to be with more hands-on stuff. Whereas I have another student who only wants to see things through visual, and I might not be a fast enough teacher and they would rather have a video. So we're learning about each other in this low risk, those first 2 weeks, and we talk about it, and we come together as a class and say, you know, raise your hand if you're this kind of learner, and raise your hand if you're this kind of learner. And so we realize that everybody learns different, and like learning in math might look different than learning in reading. But you really discover through all of these things real quickly who your tech kids are, who's going to need more help, who's very independent, who still feels like somebody else should be doing all the learning work for them and is very fearful about it being turned over to them. And you can begin to scaffold for these kids and help them work through and navigate through this beginning of the year. I also established this shared collaborative community, and then we discussed how we don't have those assigned seats, but depending on the subject, you may move. Now, of course, like any good teacher, if you have a bad group, not bad, but if you have a group together and they're not working and things like that, I will, of course, assert my will and say, hey, I can move anybody anytime I want. But in order to have all of this, because it probably sounds like a bunch of just chaos right now, there are a few essential organizational strategies that I'd like to share before we talk about the various subjects. And so I found over the last few years a couple of these organizational strategies that helped us as we went from desks to tables. In the upper right-hand corner, you have these green buckets. And so you no longer have that desk space. So the students are able to put their pencils and their spirals and their folders and their earbuds and their headphones in there. And just like a desk, you can tell from this picture I have kids that are incredibly messy and incredibly neat. But it's a great way to store their stuff, and they can move that with them if they want from table to table, or they just get up and know that they go to their bucket that's numbered. I've also found that changing my supply list for a blended classroom, I really get rid of a lot of the extra paper that we don't need. So that might be something to consider. If I'm gonna go around counterclockwise here. The blue baskets in the middle of the table are very helpful because all the supplies are right there. So you cut out the time that kids are transitioning from place to place because each table has this. So even if they forgot their pencil when they were moving about, there's more stuff here. And you will find that you would definitely want more of that on each table, because then you're not having kids dart around the room all the time looking for supplies. This red file folder on the left-hand side here is something I added this year and has been a lifesaver, and I'm sure I will add 3 more next year. This used to all be just math lessons per unit. So let's say we were on unit 5, I would have lesson 1 through 10 then in the folders, and then the quick quizzes and things there so that the kids could move about it at their own pace, and I can send them over there and they knew where to find them. Towards the middle of the year, I moved the bottom half to be math and then put some supplies up there for poetry and some other resources like a summary, editing sheet, and things like that. So these hanging folders help with the pace of the kids as they're moving around the room. And their access, they can get to it. You don't have to go run to the copier machine all the time. It's all copied right there. The portfolios in the bottom, those are old, but they're nice. And that helps you keep track when you get ready to do grade cards or something like that. You can look through the pieces that you chose to take as a grade and kind of make sure that they're on track, or you could look through them after school a little bit. And then we have our MacBook Airs that are in a dish rack. That's pretty handy. I wouldn't suggest metal. Plastic is a little nicer, but I took the donation, so it just helps to keep them organized, and then you can keep them charging. So how do these organizational strategies free up my time and make me less stressed? Well, let's check out how this kind of works then once we're going in the classroom. So I started with one subject, and of course you're going to start still whole group, and depending on the subject, you might have whole group once a week or a little time every day. It just depends on your blend. By the time I get to January in math, I am no longer doing any whole group instruction whatsoever. It is only small group. But I do start off the beginning of the year. And as you can kind of see, these kids have their whiteboards up, and I've done a mini instruction on metric conversions. And as the students hold up their whiteboards, you're noticing who's finishing first and who's getting it, and those that are holding up things that are incorrect. And I kind of have the answers on a sticky note in my hand, so I can just look up and see and say, okay, great, go on, and then project it in the front of the classroom, or the perceived front, is the student activity book on a whiteboard, and so they kind of see the next problems. And so what you find out after about 5 minutes is you've got 6 kids that completely have this. So I send them off to some other part of the room and tell them to go ahead and start on the worksheet, evens or odds, and then I take the next bit of group that needs more practice with me, and we model some more, and then they're showing me that they have it. I send them to another side of the room, and I'm left with the kiddos that probably aren't getting it at all, and we need to back up a couple steps and do some reteaching and scaffolding, and then I get to work with them while the other students are going on. And this is, if you notice, no technology whatsoever. There's really no tech involved in this part. And you could do that, and to me that's kind of a blended model anyway, and that's freeing up your time because you kind of are seeing where the kids are, and you're making those adjustments as you go. But all of this I feel like is really enhanced when we add Blackboard, because now I've basically cloned myself by 10. So in Blackboard for math, I have videos of me working through the student activity book. I have other videos from Khan Academy or other places like that embedded in here. And then I have the instructions as to what to do for the H&R pages. And then for my high students who are just flying through this, they have would you rather challenges that you see in the lower left-hand corner, or I get pull activities from Yummy Math or Inside Mathematics and have these more in-depth problem-solving real-world problems that the kids have to work on before they can move on. That kind of keeps the kids reined in a little bit and all working within the same unit. But then what I find as the year goes on that you really have kids, and this is the first time I was posed this question this year, and it was really hard for me because I didn't know what to say at first. These girls said, well, do we even have to do the student activity book? And I was like, well, yeah, shouldn't you have to do the practice? And they're like, but we already know it. And so I decided, okay, we'll go take the end of the thing review, and if you get 90% or higher, then I think we should be good to go. And sure enough, they aced it better than that. And so here I am thinking, I wasn't challenging them enough. And so now I'm able to, and I got them some more. They decided, they met with me and they created their own ratios unit while the other students were working on the unit they had already finished, and they put together, some objectives they needed to meet and some challenges, and they worked on that. So right there, they're creating their own educational plan, and with very, very little from me, they went and scoured, Khan Academy or wherever and found the stuff that they needed because they were working faster than I could even put things in Blackboard. So how do you keep track of all this? Well, this is pretty messy, but of course I have the portfolios I could always go back to. But I have these little cheat sheet things I make in the upper right-hand corner, and after 3 years, it's been awesome because I have all the units on note cards, and these are all the answers. So I can walk around with Unit 8 in my hand, and as I, walk through each of the table groups, I can, be checking to see that they have the right answers on which lesson. And so, if I notice not a single kid has gotten a single one right, I can be like, whoa, let's go work over here together. And so that's helpful for me to kind of keep track of where the kids are so they can't just go free for all. Also, I use one of these Excel sheets and write where it says math with the arrow. That's like a Monday. I write what lesson they're on, and they know they should probably be moving at about a lesson a day to be on track. That's about average. And so then I kind of check back in with them at the end of the week and see where they're at, and then we adjust to what their needs are at that time. And then these are the main grades I take for to kind of see if they're meeting the standards or whatever. And then I make, of course, myself notes like enrich or other things. So I have these record sheets that really help me. And mine are messy. Yours would probably be much neater or be put in by the computer. But this is what kind of works for me, and it ends up really freeing up time later, even when I go to record for grade cards. So math has really become redefined. There's more collaboration. The pace, place, path, and time is chosen by the students. And as you can see in these two pictures in the upper right-hand corner, these are two girls, one's at home, FaceTiming in with another, and they're working on the geometry together. She just didn't want to be left out, and she couldn't come to school because she had a fever, and so she still wanted to do geometry. I don't know what kind of craziness that is, but I have students that do this quite often, and they'll also call in and FaceTime in with reading groups so they can also read together with their peers, or even a science lab if they're going to miss it that day. In the lower corner, this is one of my favorites. I worked really hard with a girl in pink to teach a concept, and she is now teaching this small group what she learned from me one-on-one. And again, all of this is freeing up time for me to go work with other students. And another interesting story is the first time I walk around from table to table and I'm saying, hey, do you need me? Hey, do you need anything? And I get to the end of walking that room and not a single kiddo said, yes, I need you. And that's terrifying as an educator, because I was like, oh, I'm not needed. Oh my goodness, my job is completely replaceable. I guess I could just be a virtual school. But I don't believe that's true. And some of the reasons why is that my role has just been redefined since I started blended learning. And I would argue that my role is even more important now than it was as the performer who stood up front and spoon-fed out information at a set pace. Because now I can be an architect. Would those girls have gotten to do a ratio unit and change and create it themselves and see where they needed to go and learn more on some 6th grade standards if I would have just been up front holding them back? Probably not. Would that young student who is teaching that other small group have that confidence in math had she just been sitting in the class being spoon-fed information, day after day? I doubt it. But now she feels like she's a strong math student and that she can do it. So what do I do with that time now? So I now have these little stolen moments, I like to call them, or free time, which is what you're probably listening for, how you can get more free time. So this will gradually increase throughout the year, and of course, the more years you blend, the more free time you'll get. These little stolen moments then become times where I can sit down at my computer and I can add something into Blackboard. I can create a quick little video if a student needs it. I can grade a couple journals. I could grade some papers. I all of a sudden have some of this time. In my district, we're fortunate. The teachers have been collaborating on these great times together, and so we'll add each other to our Blackboard accounts. And so if I'm thinking, well, we're going to be doing something science, I might take some of this free moment or stolen moments that I like to call them, go into somebody else's Blackboard, check out their science module on something that we might be teaching, grab it and copy it over into mine. And all of a sudden, my lesson plans are finished. Bam, we just collaborated from across the town of Lawrence, and it's helped out a lot, and that's been really kind of fun. So how does all this look in other subjects? Because math is, to me, was pretty basic, pretty linear. I felt like it really lent itself to blending. But other areas might not seem as much. So with our English and language arts, I still meet with the kids in small groups, and the groupings always change. But I have that time where sometimes I can even do benchmark testing, where the kids are all at these stations, where I used to just stress about how am I going to get reading levels in at mid-year. Well, the kids are all engaged doing their own work throughout the room, and Blackboard is helping me kind of keep the kids on track. So I have free time to do those benchmark tests and to meet with reading groups. I kind of have I call them stations, but I kind of took the Daily 5 and stations from probably 1970s, and I kind of Frankensteined it all together. And we call them rotations now. Basically, they're learning centers where kids can be using the technology like you see with these boys working here. They might be working on a current event, as from the screenshot I show you over here, or they might be working through a module that teaches them about text structures. What's really great is I can also have grade-dependent releases on the modules. And so let's say you get your kiddos who want to go ahead and go really fast, and they don't really care what grade they're getting. They just think fastest is best and the first one done. And they'll come up and say, Mrs. Bailey, how come so-and-so's part 2 is open, but my part 2 won't show up? And I can say, well, you didn't get the right grade yet. You gotta go back and revise and edit your stuff. And that's been a lifesaver, because that gets to those kids that are maybe do need kind of the person to sit next to them sometime. That catches them and kind of slows them down. It encourages perseverance and really helps with revising and editing when you're grading like their writing pieces and stuff. I also like that they can get badges and rewards as I check off each one, and it really motivates the kids. And again, this is all stuff that's happening kind of independent of me, so I'm not having to worry about it as much because I've created this already, and I created this 2 years ago, and so now I might revitalize parts of it, but then I can just pull from this year after year, which again is stress relieving and frees up quite a bit of time. Another component I really like is how much more in depth you can go with your book units. So as your students are meeting with or without you, you could do this together, or I like to have the kids on those big TVs doing this together. They can have a book talk and find more background about, a lot of these kiddos have never been to Hawaii. So if we're reading a book and its setting is in Hawaii, how are you going to get that visual for a lot of these kids? Well, we can just do mashups through Blackboard and get a video of Jalape, and they can watch it, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can really relate to how that's been going and things like that. So it really does, you can also enrich your kiddos who might finish that book in like a day because they read so fast. And you can have, like I always attach the author's website so that they can go read maybe the next book and be challenged in a mini author study after the fact. Another key component for me that has really freed up time, you have those students who you might need to read with every time, but you need to also meet with a higher group. Well, how do you do that? How does that look? Well, I take and I read chapters of the book oh goodness, I'm having trouble there. It's late afternoon. I read the book and I record it or screencast-o-matic it or something, and I put it in Blackboard, and then the kids are able to access that and listen to me, it being read aloud. So it doesn't matter their level of reading ability, they'll still be able to join in with the 5th grade book. And boy, does that increase that confidence for your struggling readers and pushes them a little bit harder. And you'll be surprised who would like to listen to you read anyway. So some of my high kids, sometimes I'll find them over there listening to me reading aloud. I think they just think my scratchy voice is funny. So what else? how many people always are looking at science and that's the one that usually is put on the back burner, right? We're often thinking, oh, I don't have time with it, whether science is fearful to some people or you just don't. You're like, well, it's either this or social studies, so we'll switch them on and off, or we'll only do it on Tuesdays, or we'll only do it every other Wednesday. And it's a real disservice to the students when they could really be getting science every day. And so for me, I can use one of those rotation stations and have one always be science because I've built things into Blackboard, and that frees up my time. They can watch a video about a science concept. I can video myself setting up a lab, put the materials out. I can be working across the room with someone else, and they can create and complete a lab without me having to do anything because the instruction has already been there. Because like I said, I've been cloned by Blackboard 10 times. So now I have small amounts of time more often in science, and I feel like the kids are really getting that. And then I can always return to science later in the afternoon or a longer time on another day. But there's a lot that you can do with science for that. Flipping the lessons are also helpful. They can go home and maybe get kind of a science lecture background, and then when we come in, we can really explore with the hands-on stuff that the kids like so much. And then finally, my favorite as a history major is the social studies component. You know, I talked about how much I loved being in front of the classroom and having this show that I kind of put on. And I'm able to kind of rechannel that, as you can tell us my costumes here. As I have history come alive, I do kind of some history mysteries where I break a book into a small picture book, you know, younger kids book, into little parts, and then I send them on these research investigations, and they have to kind of investigate history and what happened, and then debate about it later. And they can do that in journals or however they want to do it. But then at the end, they have to kind of submit their theory, and then they can debate each other. And again, this helps all my learners because if they want to check out the book and just read it themselves, they can. But it's nice to have it kind of read aloud with all that harder Tier 2 vocabulary they're having in social studies. I get to discuss it with them through these videos. I also really like how I can put primary resources now into Blackboard and really have the kids interacting with some primary resources and really have that discourse about history and historical events. It's been quite fun. So this is kind of my idea and what I hope are some really amazing tips that could help you either start blended learning or see some things through what I've discussed today that can really start to free up some of your time as you take yourself from the front of the classroom and that exhausting role of doing everything for the kids to letting the kids take a lot more of that control and being there as more of the architect and the person to just kind of guide them through the curriculum and give them all the different components they need. So I'm not sure if you guys have any questions for me or if I could elaborate on anything else for you, but I'd take some.
Hi, Hannah. This has been awesome. I've already seen the same kind of comments in the chat. Patty, wow, good ideas. I know, I love the part earlier that students have actually said, can you assign me more homework?
Yes, that always throws me off because I'm like, okay. So
I think you've figured out a magic recipe if you've got kids asking for more homework.
Yes, for sure.
We've got some comments coming in chat. Melissa, lots of great ideas that are worth investigating in my classrooms and Blackboard. Great to hear that. We've got 8 minutes left in the hour. Not that we have to use every last second, but please, everyone, if you've got questions, please add them to the chat or just use your talk button, unmute on the phone line. We've got a small group here. We can make this interactive. Please ask questions, share comments, feedback. This has been a great session.
This is Patty in Glen Rose, Texas.
Hi, Patty.
Hi. Since we've got a little bit of extra time, would you go back to the page with the parents again and what you did with the parents as far as the flipping beforehand, what, again, you shared out with the parents?
Sure. Let me see if I have the right slide. This one or the actual screenshots with the module?
The actual screenshots with the module. Yes, that one.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so the top one is really great because I send them various videos. One of them is a great Blackboard video that they shot in our classrooms last year. It's like 3 minutes long, but it interviews the students and they talk about their favorite part of blended learning, and they kind of see the classroom in action. So I put those kind of videos in that top one so parents kind of get an idea of what we're talking about and how really our district is really not doing one-to-one. We want it to be a collaborative, blended environment, and we're not just sitting your kid in front of screen time. So I feel like that module kind of gives them that background information. And then I'm kind of into this Carol Dweck growth mindset, and so we talk about kind of how our brain works. So I like to talk to the kids and relate it to them with like, they all love basketball and KU men's basketball, and so we talk about how, one player, if he doesn't practice his layup, he's not going to be able to teach his muscles that memory to do it so well. So we watch a video about your actual brain making those connections and how when you make those connections over and over again, it solidifies. And so I think that's helpful for the parents and the kids to kind of see that that's how our brain really works. So then there's a couple articles just on how we're all different learners in there. The power of yet is also a newer idea that I've gotten actually just in the last 6 months. And so that's a new module. I haven't tried that out on my parents yet. There, I just used it. But it's just talking about, the kiddo that's like, well, I'll never learn this or something. And it's like, well, you just haven't learned your multiplication tables yet. Or, you're just not spelling there, and there correct yet. And so that's kind of what that one works with. I think the parents really like the fact that they have access to seeing things about your classroom, and so there's not this shroud of, like secrecy of what blended learning is or what I'm doing. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Is there any way we could get access to some of those videos since you've done the I could bookmark them on my YouTube channel. So
that would be awesome.
Okay, I don't know. I'm kind of a newbie at a YouTube channel, but I think if you just went in and searched for Diana Bailey, my channel would come up because it's public. So I can add those on there.
Your YouTube channel will take care of that. We'll go search you out. Thank you so much.
Okay, do that.
And I'll add, we were able to capture a lot of footage on campus too, and have a playlist on the Blackboard YouTube channel. I'm just pulling that link and I'll paste it in the chat right now.
Oh, thank you.
This is different than I'm sure what all you have in there, Diana, but you'll see footage from Diana's classroom and other classes in Lawrence in this playlist that I just put in the chat, everyone.
Thank you. That's one of my favorite videos.
And I'll find the multimedia landing page that we did on Lawrence as well. We've got a whole story that everybody could use. Other questions, comments? All right. Let me go ahead and move into the last couple of slides then. But I'm not doing this to discourage additional questions coming in. So go ahead and paste more questions in the chat. Oh, were you at the end, Diana? Or
Yeah, I didn't know if you were going to do that or if you wanted me to, so you go ahead.
Okay, did you go through all your slides, or you did?
I did, yeah. We just backed up, so.
Okay, so just a reminder that BB World is in DC this summer. Please join us. It will be a great time. I'm thrilled to hear that you read their book, Diana, and let's catch up on that after the session. But join us at BB World. It's going to be awesome. And then be sure to join us again for the last session of the spring series on June 1st with Maryville City Schools, who will be sharing their successes over the past year. Thank you to Diana for joining us today. This was a great session, seriously. Have a great day, everyone, and happy Memorial Day next weekend.
Thank you.